What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of C-Rod's Tell Me Your Story podcast. I'm your host, C-Rod. Let me tell you a story. Today's story starts out in a small town that has been compared to Mayberry from the Andy Griffith Show. Town so small that they call the bubble because nothing ever happens there. Chapin, South Carolina to be exact. In this small town, there was a kid who grew up on the lake. He was your typical kid. He had two good parents. Though they were divorced, they were both strongly in his life, and he did the regular kid things that a kid would do growing up on the lake. As he got older, he had a problem though. His older brother would always kick his ass. In order to combat this, his dad put him into wrestling, and he learned how to wrestle. He went to the local high school, and he wrestled there and competed in sports. After high school, he went to college, where he showed out and shined in wrestling again. After college, he found himself going into a gym one day, thinking about pursuing a career in MMA. Here at the gym, he would meet his future wife and mother of his children. He would also find something else that day. He would find a path that he would find himself taking in the future. Which brings us to the premise of this story. Just because you are given adversity or a struggle, it doesn't mean that you deserve something. And just because you do not face adversity or a struggle, it doesn't mean you don't deserve something that you work hard for. Point being, hard work and dedication is rewarded, and is only rewarded to the people who do it, not to the people who think they deserve it. With that being said, that brings us to today's episode. And today's episode is the story of Cody Brundage. All right, back at you with another episode of C-Rod's Tell Me Your Story podcast. I'm your host, C-Rod, and I'm with you with my guest today, Cody Brundage.
Oh, yeah. What's up, brother?
I struggle with names. I know. I'm sorry. But Cody's with me today to share his story. He just signed a big deal for a UFC 300. And so I'm suppose, a lot of people are going to be watching this.
That's what they tell me. Yeah, shit.
No pressure. But he's come here to tell you his story. And Cody's a professional MMA fighter. He's also very young. He's been fighting most of his life. He's been competing most of his life. And he's going to tell you what it's like living a life of someone who's in the UFC and competes and whatnot. But today we're going to start out a little bit different because he's going to had a ton of interviews lately, right?
Yeah, tons of interviews. Everybody tell me how much Bo Nickal's going to beat me. So I'm glad we're on a different track for this one, which is good.
Yeah. So let's get all the now news out of the way, and then with the now news, we'll go into your story a little bit. So just signed for UFC 300, and I saw an interview where you told Mark that you already knew.
Yeah, I had an idea, right? And I had told my wife, previously, I'm going to fight Bo Nickal at UFC 300. She's like, that's a huge card. They're not going to book you to fight him. There's so many other people in the division that they're going to book him against. I was like, you watch. And then the next day, coach called me, said, hey, I got a fight offer. And I told him, I said, I bet it's Bo Nickal at 300, huh? He said, that's facts. So, yeah, we just manifested that whole thing.
Talk about manifest. I've heard people talk about manifesting, but geez.
Yeah.
Well, before that, the slam, bro.
Yeah. So I think that kind of put me in having that performance put me in a position to get booked for this fight, right? I kind of had my ups and downs, especially in 2023. But then to end on such a high note with a highlight reel slam performance bonus, kind of had people talking about me, had some buzz around my name, really lined me up for this next opportunity. But it was dope. Back-to-back slams. I don't think that's ever happened. Only the 14th slam ever, which to me seemed crazy. When they told me that, I was like, there's got to be way more than that. Because growing up, I feel like I saw tons of slam highlights of Rampage Jackson and all those people, but yeah. I guess it doesn't happen as much as I thought.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. What was cool was after that was Rampage. He FaceTimed me, told me I got my black belt in Rampage Jiu-Jitsu. So,
no way.
Yep. That was that was one of the best moments for me in my fight life for sure. Because obviously looking up to him and he was in every highlight ever growing up. He was the man. So for him to FaceTime me was pretty dope.
Was it just out of the blue?
Well, he was with Jacob Pargo, my manager. So Jacob FaceTimed me with him. It was like, yeah, you got your black belt in Rampage Jiu-Jitsu. So.
So, when you slammed him, though, I noticed, so he was trying to set up I bet you he was thinking, oh, I got this train. I got it. Because he was trying to set it up. But this always happened to me in the gym, that like a lot of guys, I don't know if they realize it, like you could turn, like you turned right out of it. Like, did you know, like, oh, dude, I'm gonna turn out right out of it?
Well, I kind of thought the same thing. I was like, oh shit, he kind of has this triangle that he's trying to lock up. And then so my instinct was, you know, gorilla slam this dude through the mat, see what's up. But I honestly thought he was gonna let go in the middle of it because the thing that happened before, like, so there was a slam preview, like right before me.
Yeah.
So I thought he would have seen that backstage and maybe been like, all right, I'm bailing on this or whatever, but he didn't. So I was like, all right, we're gonna see where this goes.
It goes to sleep.
Yeah, it goes to night, I guess, bro.
So now you're gonna fight. You're fighting Bo Nickal, and so it was really hard. I was like watching your videos. I know we're friends, but I was watching your videos because I always try to make people feel welcome, you know, when they come in my home. And man, it was kind of irritating how people are underestimating you. Do you feel the same way? And you can just be honest. Like, it's not irritating.
I don't think anyone, other than like the people that know me, have trained with me, are really giving me a shot. But that's okay because I know how hard I train. I know what level I'm at. Like, I've had some big wins in the UFC. I still don't think I've fought to my potential. So when I pull that out at UFC 300, people will look back and be like, man, that was really stupid. The odds on this fight were stupid. The way we didn't think he was going to win was stupid. But you always see that, right? Like, everyone thinks somebody's unbeatable until the first guy goes and beats him. And I'm not worried about it. I used to, you know, early in my career, my whole point in fighting was like, I'm going to prove all these people wrong who don't believe in me, who think that I'm not going to win. And my mindset, just my last fight and then going into this fight, is I just want to prove the people that do believe in me right. You know, kind of like forget the people that don't believe in me. There's way more of those. I don't need to worry about them. They don't know me. They don't have my phone number, so they can't call me or talk to me. Like, I just want to prove the people right who do have my phone number, who do believe in me, who go to war with me every day. And I really think I'm going to do that at UFC 300. Like, people are saying I took this fight because I just want to be on the card. Like, I've seen that narrative a little bit, but I really think I'm going to run through this dude. I don't think it's going to even be close.
Yeah. I was I was like watching it, and they were like, oh, he's going to do this and this. And I was getting like so irritated. I was like, I'm not fucking watching it. I was getting so irritated because people don't know, like, yeah, he's this great wrestler and whatnot, but you're a great wrestler too. And his striking is successful because a lot of people are scared of that grappling, and you're not going to be scared of that grappling. Yeah, no. I don't know what.
Yeah, I won't be afraid anywhere the fight goes. I feel like he's got guys kind of just staring, looking at him because, like you said, they're so worried about the wrestling. And, you know, I invite the wrestling. If he wants to wrestle, we can make that happen too. And on the feet, it's not even close. Like, I'm faster, more powerful, better striking, been training striking longer, way more diverse in what I'm doing. And so if it stays on the feet, he's going to get schooled. And I remember coming up when I was a young wrestler, and I was like, man, this guy's a wrestler, so I can work my striking, right? And I would stand on the feet and try to work my striking, and I hope that's his intention. I hope in his mind he's like, oh, this guy's a wrestler too. Like, let me work some of this stuff I've been doing, because if he does that, he will go to sleep for sure.
Yeah. The one thing is Factory X is known for striking. So
yeah, which is part of the reason I came there, right? And I took my lumps for years and years, and like now I'm starting to give lumps, starting to get better, get more confident. But I mean, it definitely was a process. And he's not at a gym like Factory X. You know, he's kind of running his own show, and he doesn't have training partners like I have. He doesn't have any Dustin Jacobys. He doesn't have any Anthony Smiths. He doesn't have guys like that to really put it on him. Yeah. So when he gets in there and somebody's finally putting it on him, he's not going to even know how to react. Like I said the other day in an interview, he doesn't even know what kind of fighter he is. He's never been cracked in a fight ever. And you fought, and I fought, and anyone that has ever fought, when you get cracked for the first time, it's a completely different thing. If you've never been there, and he's never been there, and it's going to be under the brightest lights at the biggest event of the year, maybe of all time. Yeah. Like, we'll see how he reacts, because I'm going to find his chin. I know I will.
All the pressure's on him, for sure.
100%.
Yeah. So here we are, 2023.
24.
24. Let's go. Excuse me, I'm old. Edit. 2024. April, you're going to fight UFC 300. How did we get here?
How did we get here? It's an interesting story, because I feel like I've been around so many different people in fighting and heard their stories, and my story is completely different than most people I've met, right? I came from a super small town, Chapin, South Carolina, itty bitty town, mostly upper middle class. I think my high school is like 97% white guys, like we just like had no diversity. We used to laugh and call Chapin the bubble, like when I grew up, because like nothing bad happened there. It was like Mayberry, right? And it's funny because when I first started fighting, like people are like, well, what are you doing for your job? I'm like, no, I'm trying to go be like a fighter in the UFC. And they're like, well, what is that? Like, what are you even talking about? You're gonna fight for money? I'm like, yeah, that's like, it's a real thing. It's on TV. Like at the time it was on Fox, I think. I'm like, yeah, it's on Fox. It's a big thing. Like,
are you in the mob?
Yeah, they're like, what do you mean, dude? Like, what are you doing? You're a bouncer? I'm like, no, I like, there's professional, like, they're like, you do tough mans? Like, remember the old tough mans they used to do?
I remember those.
Yeah, I'm like, no, it's like sanctioned, like, cage fighting. And it was never my intention to go into fighting, right? But I was in Chapin, grew up there until I was 18 years old, was a multi-sport athlete, played football, wrestled my whole life. I had 4 brothers and a sister, so it was a super competitive household. My dad put me into wrestling when I was 10 years old, I want to say, because I was getting my ass whooped by my brothers all the time. And I think he was like, man, we gotta find some way for Cody to defend himself or get some of this frustration at, huh?
Are you the youngest?
I'm in the middle. So I have 2 older brothers, 2 younger brothers, and a younger sister. But my older brother, like, there was a big enough gap between me and my younger brothers that I never really could whoop their ass. They were much younger than me, like 7 and 8 years younger than me. So it was like too old to do that. My oldest brother was way older than me. He was kind of out of the picture like most of my life. But then my older brother was only 3 years older than me, and he just would take me to the cleaners. It was bad, right? So, in fact, like my dad, so my parents were divorced when I was super young, but my father would be like, we'd go to his house and be there on the weekends, and anytime me and my older brother would argue, he'd be like, all right, I'm over it, put on the boxing gloves, we're gonna go in the garage. And half of it was, I think he wanted us to like work out our problems, half of it was like his entertainment. He was like the ref for our fights, and my brother just beat the brakes off me every time. Like we probably did this every weekend, and I would mostly start it. I was like, I'm gonna get him, and so finally I was like, how can I beat my older brother, right? And the rule was like, when you say you're done, it's over, right? There's no continuing this. So we put on the gloves to go out there. I punch my brother as hard as I can in the face, and immediately I throw off my gloves. I'm like, I'm done. It's over. He gave me the worst ass whooping I ever got, I think, after that. My dad was just laughing. And but yeah, so grew up in a super competitive family. Like I said, I wrestled, played football, I swam, I did all sports, right? Like I just was never at home, really. I was just trying to stay busy with sports. I loved athletics. I did pretty well in school. And I was fortunate, there was a college, Newberry College. It was only 30 minutes from where I grew up, but they were a top 5 team in the country in Division II wrestling. Wow. Which is uncommon because South Carolina is not really known for their wrestling, but they had been able to build like a pretty big powerhouse college team right down the road. And I actually knew the coach for a long time. I always did like summer camps there. And like I said, grew up super well off, right? And like didn't have many struggles. I was going to summer camp. We had jet skis and boats, and like my life was really good when I was young, which isn't typical for fighters, right? It's not. It's just not. Most fighters, like, they're fighting for a reason, right? They come from hard things, and I struggled with that later on in my career, and I'll get to that later. But so I ended up going to Newberry College. Like I said, it's about 30 minutes from my house. I was on a wrestling scholarship there. I majored in education. I was going to be a teacher and a coach. That was my plan, right? I was going to coach wrestling and football, and I was going to teach history and English in middle school. And then I very quickly learned, like when I did my student teaching, that I was not going to do that, right? I was like, maybe this isn't for me. And when I got to college to wrestle, there weren't many expectations, right? Like we talk about this fight for UFC 300. No one expects me to win. No one expects me to have success. When I got to college to wrestle, I made the state finals as a senior, took second in the state, but South Carolina is not a great wrestling state. This team that I went and wrestled for in college was really successful. I don't think anyone thought like I'd be a starter. I'd kind of be like a non-impact guy is what they thought. And I just worked really hard and eventually broke the starting lineup, ended up qualifying for the NCAA tournament twice and made the blood round, which is top 12 in the country twice, which was like out of this world for what the expectations on me were. But to me, I always wanted to be an All-American, which is top 8 in the country.
Yeah.
And it never happened, which was probably a good thing, because if I would have done that, I probably would have gone and been a teacher and been a coach. But I was just hungry for more. I was like, okay, well, what's going to be next? And I was a huge fan of MMA, but I didn't know if I was going to fight. But I was like, okay, I'll train. And so after I graduated college, I moved up to Michigan. I was dating a girl at the time. I moved up to Michigan with her. We were living together, and I was coaching at a Division III college, Olivet College. I was coaching wrestling, and then I started to train. And shortly after I got there, me and the girl kind of fell out. We broke up, whatever. And so I was living in my car, and I was living in the wrestling coach's office on this couch basically every night, right? So there was a little bit of adversity there, I guess, like some struggles, but I was a single dude. I didn't really have any responsibilities other than myself, so it was easy. Yeah, it was easy. I was like, whatever. I mean, it sucked, like sleeping in my car in the winter, but it wasn't like terrible. I was only worried about myself. It was honestly easier than probably when I was in the relationship because I only had to take care of myself. But so the first day I went to the MMA gym, I show up in the morning because I didn't know like if they like their schedule. So I just showed up there. They didn't have any like classes in the morning. It was just kind of like open mat, but there was nobody there except for one girl and another girl. And this girl was teaching this other girl private lessons. She was a little thing, probably like 130 pounds, 5'3", tiny girl. And so I just put on some like Dick's Sporting Good gloves. And you know what? Actually, let me rewind. That made me think of something. When I was in college, I loved MMA so much. I was running like a fight promotion out of my wrestling room. What? So that's kind of an interesting thing.
Hold on, what?
Yeah. So I had like I would like manufacture like fake beef between guys on my team and make them like fight each other in our wrestling room. They'd have like walkout songs. It was like a whole production, dude. And like we'd make the recruits
actual fights too.
Well, like not MMA, but we make them like box.
Yeah. They fought, though.
Yeah, they fought. We get them like $1 mouthpieces, boil and bites, and they would go at it. It was hilarious. Yeah, I had a fight club going on, and we'd have like the recruits. They'd be fighting each other. It was dope, bro. There were some of the best fights I ever saw.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was super fun, entertaining, and like I said, I didn't know if I was gonna fight or anything, but I would like get in there and mix it up, and you know, it was fun for me. But so fast forward, I'm at this MMA gym, first time I'm ever there, and I put on my cheap ass boxing gloves and I just start hitting the bag. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just hitting the bag. I'm like, this is a good workout. This looks good. The girl I was talking about earlier comes up to me and she's like, you have no idea what you're doing, huh? And I was like, what the hell? I was like, who are you to come talk to me, you little girl? Like, you don't know anything. Little did I know that she was a fighter in the UFC. Her name was Amanda Bobby Cooper. And she ended up, now she's my wife. But in the moment, I was like, who the hell is this girl coming telling me I suck at fighting? Yeah. That's how I met my wife. That was the first interaction I had with her. And she was like, listen, she was a gold glove boxer. Like I said, she fought in the UFC. Wow. So she was like, I'm gonna help you with your striking. And she knew I came from a wrestling background. And so she was my first coach ever. And we would I would come in the morning. She would do drills with me. And she would always tell me, she's like, you're going to make it. Like, you're going to be really successful. And when you're really successful, you're going to owe me 2%. And I've been trying to get that 2% deal back ever since. She's getting way more than 2%. I think I get 2%.
You said 2%.
Yeah. I try to remind her that doesn't work. But yeah, so she was my first coach, and she was teaching me. She'd teach me how to box. And so my schedule was I would go to the gym in the morning. I would drive to wrestling practice, which was like an hour and a half away at the college I was coaching at. I would run the wrestling practice, do the wrestling practice, and then I would drive back to the MMA gym and do night classes. And then I would drive back to the college and I would do security like through the night. So I had a part-time job as like campus security too.
Pretty busy.
Yeah, so it was super busy. And like the campus security job just basically paid my way to like get to where I was going, like paid my gas. Yeah. So I was like making no money. I was super broke. And I didn't know like if fighters made money or anything. I assumed they did. I was like, oh, they must make money, right? And then I quickly realized that was not the case. And I had been training for maybe like, I want to say like a month and a half, maybe. And obviously Bobby was my main coach. The owner of the gym's name was James Gray. He fought on Contender Series. He was one of my head coaches too. And then Colin Anglin, who I actually moved out here with to Colorado, was like my main training partner. We just clicked really well. And eventually I ended up living with Colin. He was like, hey, you want to come live with me and my dad, he said. And I was like, I'm not coming to live with you and your dad, bro. We're not doing that. Little did I know, he was just saying at his dad's house. His dad was living in China. So then he's like, bro, my dad doesn't even live here. He told me that like weeks later. He's like, I don't know why you won't come live with me. I'm like, oh, your dad's not at the house? He's like, no, I drove that day. I'm like, all right, I'm staying at your house, bro. But so my wife called me. It was in my debut. It was December 17th. She called me. She said, hey, you got a fight in 3 days. And I was like, what do you mean I have a fight in 3 days? what does that even mean? She's like, you're going to Ohio. Amateur. Oh. She's like, you're going to Ohio. I got you a fight. I was like, what do you mean? I didn't sign a contract or anything. She's like, don't worry. I signed the contract for you. So she signed my name on this contract. Just sign me up for this fight. And like we had talked about fighting potentially, but I didn't know for sure like that's what I was going to do. Yeah. So she signed me up. I was like, all right. And like the whole drive down there, she's telling me, she's like, you know, you're gonna, you need to just wrestle this kid. Just wrestle this kid. Just wrestle this kid. I'm like, well, I've been working my striking. Like, I want to show my striking. She's like, no, just wrestle this kid. You'll beat him. It'll be all good. And so we get down there, and the fight happens. The kid's name is Jeremy Baker. His debut too. I'm nervous. You know how it is. My first fight ever. I didn't know anything. Get in the cage. Threw the hardest right hand I could, put it right on his chin, knocked him out. It was a 12-second knockout. And I was like, what? Oh, yeah. I was hooked. I'm like, all right, fighting's for me. And yeah, and I looked at her. I was like, told you, knockout. I didn't need to wrestle, right? I'm the greatest. Yeah. But I was pretty hooked after that. And so my life, I finished out the college wrestling season and then decided I'm going to try to do fighting, right? And I picked up some odd jobs just closer to the gym. Yeah. But I was like, I'm going to pursue this fighting thing and see where I can take it. You know, I had a lot of people that I respected, and like Bobby was in the UFC at the time, and she was telling me you're going to be in the UFC. So I was like, all right, I'm going to be in the UFC. That's what I'm going to sell out on this. And it was tough because my parents didn't really get it, right? They were like, fighting, like, you have a college degree, like, you went to school. Why are you going to do this? This doesn't make sense, right? And I get it. Like, I'm a parent now. Like, in the time, I didn't get it. I was like, what are you saying that for? Like, let me just do what I want to do. But as a parent, I get it. It'd be tough, right? Now they're my biggest supporters, fully on board. But the reason they were worried is you're scared, right? You're like, I don't want my kid to fail. I don't want my kid to be hurt. I don't want them to end up in a position where they can't take care of themselves. And so that was tough. And but I had a pretty successful amateur career. I went 4-2, and the only two kids I lost to were, one's top 5 in Bellator right now, and one is in the UFC. He won the Ultimate Fighter. So I was like, okay, well, I'm only losing to guys that are pro level fights anyway. I might as well go pro. And everyone else that I fought, like, if it wasn't a guy that was pretty successful as an amateur, it was like a 30-second fight. So I was like, there's no reason for me to stay in the Amis. I'm gonna go pro. So I ended up going pro in 2019, April of 2019. So I was at AMI for like a year and a half. And then, so I've only been a pro since April 2019. So it's coming up on this fight, it'll be 5 years, which is not a super long time. No. Yeah. And, I'm still learning a ton. But so as an amateur, though, I keep having to backtrack, but as an amateur, I actually came out to Denver for the first time in 2018 because my wife fought at the Pepsi Center. Oh. Yeah, so she fought at that UFC event. She lost a split decision, but that was where I met Coach Mark Montoya, got linked up with Factory X. I see. Yeah, and me and Coach just continued to have a good relationship moving forward, and just always stayed in contact with each other. Here or there, like every couple months, we just talk to each other, and so then fast forward in my pro career, I was rising the ranks pretty quick. I got to 5-0. I signed with Iridium when I was 2-0, and they're a huge management company. And everybody was kind of like drinking the Cody Brundage Kool-Aid. Like, this guy is going to be in the UFC. He's going to make it. And I was fortunate. I got to see how Bobby's career played out. And I felt like, had she left the gym that we were at in Michigan, she would have had a more successful career. If she had management, she would have had a more successful career, because there would have been a barrier of like, I can choose the fights I want. I have better training partners, those kind of things. And so for me and her, like, moving forward, we both decided that I needed to get out of Michigan and get to a gym where I had guys who would beat me consistently. I had management that would take care of me. And so I was fortunate to get to see her path at the highest level and then kind of branch off and do different things, right? So that I could have a more successful career. And so me, her, Colin, and Mary, Colin's wife, decided we were going to move down here in 2020. Because me and Colin had both got signed on Contender Series. So we moved here in July of 2020. Because the day and Bobby was going to fight again. She was fully going on like, all right, I'm going to train at Factory X2. I'm going to come back. She was like a fight away from getting signed back to the UFC. And so the day we get here, fully moved in, it was me and her anniversary. It was our anniversary of our first anniversary. of being married. And then we found out that day that she was pregnant. So her training, not going to happen. Yeah. So, and that was tough for her because we left all of our family. My family's in South Carolina. Her family's all in Michigan. So we have no family, and we're expecting our first child, which is tough. And I feel grateful that we didn't know she was pregnant before we left, because we might never have made the move, right? To leave family when and knowing like we're not going to have any help with this kid is tough. And so we didn't, like I said, we didn't know until we got here, fortunately, because then we came here and it's been a great decision. But that was hard. And then I had my Contender Series fight in September. So I had it like 3 months. I had like 3-month camp at Factory X. So, and going into that fight, I was like, I'm going to kill this kid. It's going to be easy, right? I was like, I'm going to be in the UFC like everyone's been telling me. I'm going to be undefeated. I'm the next best thing in the world. And I go in the fight. I have a ton of success early, and then I end up losing the fight. And then I'm like, all right, I have a kid coming. I got to provide for my family. This fighting isn't paying me anything. I just lost out on getting to the UFC. I was sure I was going to be in the UFC. Like, what do I do now? And that's when I went and started working for Rapid Fire. And you're like, dude, you're going to be in the UFC. It's fine. I remember this conversation. You're like, yeah, you're going to be in the UFC. Don't worry about it, bro. You've barely been fighting. You're going to be in the UFC. So I was doing Rapid Fire with Agan and you. I was probably the best package deliverer, right? Right? That's how I remember it. I think I delivered the most packages for sure.
Yeah, out in the boondocks. Yeah, remember you had the boondock route?
Oh yeah, I was like, it'd be like midnight. I'm running up these guys' porches, hoping I don't get shot. I'm like, it's good. I'm like taking a picture as I run away. But yeah, so I was working for you and taking some more fights. I took one more fight, I think, for LFA, and fighting was slow because it was COVID still. So it was like, getting fights was not the easiest thing. And so that was hard for me because, coming up, I had five fights, like quick, like from April 2019 to February of 2020. So 10 months, I had 5 fights and was on Contender Series. Nice. In September. Yeah. So it happened super fast. But then once COVID hit, it was like dead in the water, hard to find fights. So I finally get a fight for LFA, and that was in February. I actually fought like 5 days before Kingsley was born. So my wife drove out to Kansas City. I'm like, dude, if we have this baby in Kansas City, it's going to be a problem. So win my fight, we rush back. Kingsley's born. Everything's all good. And then I don't get another fight. So that was in February. I don't get another fight until September because I got booked on Contender again for October, but then I got signed short notice for the UFC. They called me on like 48 hours notice. Like, can you fly, make weight, fight this guy? What card was it? I can't remember. It was the card that Nick Diaz came back and fought Robbie Lawler. And I was fighting one of the Diaz brothers' boys, Nick Maximov. And it was crazy. I was like, I'm in the UFC, like everything I've ever wanted. But in that, right, my whole career I had struggled. I'd be like, well, I've never had struggle. Like my struggle was that I'd never had struggle. And I was like, I've never had struggle. I don't deserve to be successful because I've never had struggle. And that was a roadblock for me for a long time because I was surrounded by guys who had gone through like real shit in their life. And it made sense to me why they were successful. They've overcome something. They've gone through this. It's made them better as people. And for me, I was like, I've never really had to deal with like anything real, right, that I didn't choose, like a struggle I didn't choose. Like living in my car was because I chose to not be with this girl or whatever. Like that was my choice. So it wasn't like something that I felt like I had to overcome. It was just a decision that I had made. But the week of my fight with Nick Maximov, my daughter... so 3 weeks prior, we had gotten news, like she had these things called infantile spasms, which are basically like mini seizures in babies. And they're not very common. It's like 1 in 1,000 kids or something. So it's not common at all. And, I was actually with Dustin Jacoby cornering him for a fight when we got the news that this was happening. And so, she did a bunch of testing, genetic testing. And we didn't get the results for 3 weeks, and we were going to meet with her neurologist and her genealogist, right? And the week we're supposed to meet with them, and they're telling us like it might be bad news. You guys might get bad news. The week we're supposed to meet with them, I have to fly out Wednesday. We're supposed to meet with them Thursday. I have to fly out Wednesday for my fight with Nick Maximov. And so I had this offer to fight this kid, and it was like, do I take this offer and leave my wife by herself to go do this like life-changing meeting right? When we don't have family here, we don't have anyone here. And she told me, I was fortunate. She's like, you need to go. This is our dream. This is your dream. You need to go. So I was like, all right, fuck it. I'm going to go. And I was fortunate. And this is kind of like how I knew Factory X is where my forever place will be. Jara, Coach Mark's wife, was like, I'll go with her. I'll make sure I'm there with her. So like, she didn't have to do that. She didn't have to do that at all. Yeah. So she goes with her. They FaceTime me while they're there. And basically they tell us that she has a mutation of her ALG 113 gene, which it's like a bunch of medical terms, but it's like there's only been 40 cases of this mutated gene ever, like with anybody. Yeah. So, and like she's doing very well now, but at the time we looked it up and it's like a lot over 90% of the kids are nonverbal. Like my daughter's nonverbal. She'll be 3 in February. She's nonverbal. It was like 80% of them can't feed themselves. They have to have a G tube. A lot of them can't walk. A lot of them, like cognitively can't get past a certain level. And she's kind of blown all those things out of the water except for the nonverbal thing. And that's a testament to how hard my wife and her work. But as soon as I got that news, it quickly made me realize that your struggle is just a part of your story, right? It doesn't make or break your story. Like you don't deserve things because you have struggle. Because now I had real struggle in my life and I didn't feel like I deserved anything more than I did before, which was kind of a big turning point for me in my life. Because I was like, I can succeed in spite of the struggle and that's awesome, but the struggle isn't the reason that I'm having success, right? It's the hard work and the time I'm putting in. But it was hard for me to understand that until I had real struggle. And so we get this news basically that our daughter is going to need us for the rest of her life. And it was crushing and hard. It's still hard, but I'm going into this fight and it's the first time in my life I've ever been like, I hope this fight goes 15 minutes so I don't have to think about the real world for 15 minutes. Wow. Yeah, which is not a great thought to have before you go into a fight. And I end up losing a decision. Didn't really fight very well, but I was in the UFC and that was something that I was proud of and happy. And I'm like, okay, I will bounce back from this and we'll have some success. But that was a tough week, probably the toughest week of my life. And then we're just on this mission, right? Like of how are we going to make sure our daughter has the best life she can have. And so I remember when we met with her neurologists and genealogists, they were basically telling us all these negative things. I was like, listen, I'm not worried about the statistics. I fight in the UFC. My wife fights in the UFC. Like the statistics for that are way low. So I don't need you to tell me the statistics. I just need you to give us some goals that we can try to reach, because that's how I'm wired. That's how my wife is wired. And so they'd give us goals and 3 months later she'd crush those goals and then they'd give us more goals. And so far, like that's been something that's helped with making sure that she's progressing at a higher rate than most kids that have this mutation. And it's been good. But like I said, it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of effort and it's not always easy. But then to carry on my story, I fought again in March. And I got a finish. I finished the kid, got a performance bonus. It was a crazy fight. I was getting like killed, dominated, and then was able to jump guillotine, found the win, which was huge, man. It was like, it made me feel like I belong in the UFC, because I feel like everybody struggles with that until you get that first win. You're like, man, do I belong here? Like, how? Maybe I just got called up. So I felt like I belonged. And then my next fight, I fought a guy, Trayshawn Gore, who had some hype. He was coming off of The Ultimate Fighter. He was like kind of a big name and people were expecting big things out of him. I was able to knock him out. Had a great performance and I was riding high, man. I was like, hell yeah, I'm 2-1 in the UFC. Got 2 finishes, 2 first round finishes. I'm getting way better at fighting. My daughter's crushing it. Everything's good in my life. And then I had a fight in November. The guy pulled out, so that sucked. But then I took one short notice in December and I lost, got finished in the first round. And I was like, okay, back to reality. And then I had a fight in April and I lost. I got finished in the second round. I was like, okay, what's going on? And then I took a fight in June and I lost that fight. So I was on a 3-fight losing streak and I'm like, dude, did I forget how to fight? Like, what is happening? I'm not, and it wasn't like my skills were going way up, but my ability to perform was just down for whatever reason. I don't know what it was. Like sometimes you have those days, but I just wasn't showing up. I just wasn't having great performances. losing the guys that I should have beat, losing fights that I was dominating just because I made bad decisions, and like in the fight, not in my life, but in the fight, made bad decisions. And so I get back from that third fight that I lost. It was in Jacksonville, Florida. I get back the next day. My second daughter, Millie, is born. So I'm like, okay, let me just get a reset, right? Like, I got another child. I'm just going to cool it. I'm still in the UFC. They haven't cut me. I'm just going to ride this one out. I'm on the last fight on my contract, right? I have one more fight of my second contract. So everything's good in my life. Millie's good. And then, you know, once you have one kid with special needs or some disabilities, then you're like on eggshells with your next kid. And it's a little different. Like, it's almost like being a first-time parent again, because the way that she does things and the way she reacts to things is completely different than how my first daughter did. So we're going through that, and then I get a fight on like 2 weeks' notice in September. And the fight's going. It's kind of a back-and-forth fight. He puts me in a bad spot for like a minute, and then he elbows me in the back of the head. And the ref stops it. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, what do I do? Like, I'm rocked, right? Like, I'm hurt. But I'm like, if I don't continue fighting, the backlash from people is going to be terrible. But I'm not in a great spot to try to continue fighting, right? Like, if I stand up, I can stand up and stand in front of him, but I'm going to be at 60% of the fighter I should be because he did an illegal move. Like, that's not fair. And luckily, I could see Coach Mark, and he was talking to me. They were like, you know, Coach, they're like, don't coach, don't talk. And Coach was like, F you, I'm gonna do what I want, right? Like, he didn't care, right? He's like, I'm gonna coach. So he's like, if you can't go, don't go. Yeah. And I still stand by this decision. I didn't feel like I could go. I didn't feel like it was a smart decision. So I said I couldn't go. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if it was going to be a DQ. I didn't know if it was going to be a no contest. I didn't know if the UFC was going to cut me. I just knew that continuing to fight was a bad idea with how I felt. So, excuse me, end up getting that win by disqualification. The backlash is terrible, like some of the worst in my career. Like, I had thousands of messages. You're a quitter. You're a coward. Wow. All these things. Like, and MMA fans can be brutal, right? Like, it can be pretty toxic. So it was super toxic. I was in a pretty bad place. Plus all the work that had gone in for a camp for it to end in a fight that, like, so unclimactic or whatever, anticlimactic, where you're like, I put in all this work, I got a win, but it doesn't really feel like a win. And now I'm getting all this negative hate, and I don't know what's going to happen with my job. So I'm still continuing to train. I'm fighting full time at this point, and I'm like, what's next? Like, what's going to happen if they don't re-sign me? Am I going to continue to fight? Am I going to try to get back in the UFC? Like, I didn't know what was going to happen. So then Coach calls me like 5 weeks out from this last fight, and he's like, hey, man, they're going to re-sign you, but they want you to fight this prospect. He's undefeated prospect, coming off contender, finished everyone in the first round. And I was like, yeah, man, let's do it. And he's like, you just need to believe in yourself. He's like, it has nothing to do with your skills. You just need to have a good performance. Like, just go out there, be present, and perform. And so the whole camp, like, I'm getting better, but the whole camp, I'm like, I just need to perform and be present. And, you know, you saw the fight. Luckily, I was able to go out and handle business, get a big finish, and kind of restore that faith in myself, get a win on my first contract, and which was awesome. But now it put me in line for this huge opportunity where, like, you go beat Bo Nickal at UFC 300. It's a launch pad for the rest of your career. So a lot of fighting and life has been ups and downs for me, and I still haven't caught my stride, but I'm hoping, you know, starting to turn the corner. Like Dustin Jacoby always tells me, he's like, bro, you just need one. If you just do it one time, you're going to make it happen. And I believe that, and I'm just trying to hopefully make that happen here in April. But like I said, my story from like age 0 to 25, pretty easy. Life is pretty easy. And then I think having kids in general is hard, but then and it's scary, but then having a child that's like going to be relying on you your whole life is like, okay, it changes your whole perspective on things in life and what's important. And I love fighting. It's my favorite thing. It's my passion, but it's not the most important thing. And I think that's a good thing. I think when it was the most important thing, it was hard, like way harder and not as fun. And I appreciate being able to go to the gym. I was like, man, I gotta go to the gym. I gotta go train. Now I'm like going to the gym and training and being around my team is like my escape from the real hard things that I have to do in my life, which has been huge for me. And not that like being home is, I don't like being home, but it's just I can appreciate and have gratitude for being at Factory X more than when I'm gone, if that makes sense.
No, it makes a ton of sense. So that was it.
That's the story, bro.
That's the story. So go back over a few things. I was digitally writing it down. That was so you said you came down here and you're like, I'm not going to have a good story. But that was a great story. And you presented it really good. Am I wrong, Egan? It was great. You did it. That was magnificent.
Thanks, brother.
And so a couple of things that I go over. I think it's pretty cool. Your dad used to make you and your brother box it out.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I think he probably got it from his dad. Oh. My dad was definitely not into gentle parenting.
Oh,
he's like an ex-military guy, special forces guy, and you know, he never really whooped our ass. He just let us whoop each other's ass. He never really had to beat us because he just have us do the job. So
your parents were split up. Were you raised in your dad's house, or?
I was raised in my mom and my stepdad's house, and they were split like when I was super young. So I mean, my stepdad's been in my life, and my stepmom's been in my life since I can remember, since I was like 2 years old. So I just feel like, I don't know. I know some people like their parents are divorced and they're like bitter about it. I'm happy. Like I couldn't even imagine my parents being married. They're so different people and like different ideals, different ethics, morals, everything, like different parenting styles. And so I was just fortunate. I got to have 4 parents and extended family that like really loved me and were in my life and active in my life. And so my older brother's my full sibling, and then the rest are all half. But I mean, to me, they're all full. No, but but I had a huge family and extended family, and I was lucky for that. I feel like I'm glad my parents were divorced. I think it would be rough if they were together.
Did you say you grew up on a lake?
Grew up on a lake.
Oh.
Yeah, had a nice lake house. My house was a spot everybody wanted to come to. Had a pool, had a hot tub. I'm telling you, bro, as a kid, we had it made. And like, you know, one thing about that is I didn't have this struggle that some people have, but I also have like the ambition to give my kids that and more, which I think is good, right? Like I've seen what it can be to have like such a good childhood and how beneficial it can be. And like, that's all I want for my kids. So, you know, my parents worked really hard to do that, and I'm trying to do the same. It's just bust my ass and make it happen.
Yeah. And then high school, you're just were you the jock?
No, I was I was the jock because I did a lot of sports, but I was not like the cool popular guy, right? Like I had a growth spurt late. I was a smaller guy. I did not have any riz, as the kids say. I was definitely kind of lame. Like I was kind of a loser, and then I just blew up my senior year. But it's funny because like, you know, I wasn't the cool guy in school, but now like all the people that I thought were like, oh, these are the cool guys. These are like the coolest. They're all hitting me up now like, man, we're so proud of you. I'm like, bro, you didn't even know me in high school. You can't tell me you're proud of me now.
I tell my kids, you will tell your kids the same thing. The cool kids aren't the kids that are going to make it. The kids that have their nose in the book, and they're doing their schoolwork, and nobody knows. Those are the kids when you get 25, 26 to make it. And what I tell them is, when you're a teenager, that's not the time to be the cool kid.
Right.
The time to be the cool kid is when you're, 25, between 25, 35. You know.
Yeah, you don't want to be peaking in high school. That's
you don't
want
to be peaking in high school.
But when you're in high school, you want to be peaking in high school, right? Isn't that crazy? Like looking back, I'm like, man, I wish I would have been cooler. But like now, I'm like, who cares, bro? Like when I was in the moment, I'm like, why? I'm not popular. This is the worst. Now I'm like, bro, who cares? Like, because it's also when growing up where I grew up, everyone stayed where I grew up. So like there were like second, third, fourth generation people from that town that stayed there. They went to school 30 minutes away and came back and lived in that town. Like I'm one of the few people I feel like that's left the town and gone elsewhere, right? Like and gone somewhere to live somewhere else. And so it's like you think those are going to be your friends or the people that you're around your whole life, or at least I did. I felt like if you're not cool now, you'll never be cool because this is the town. This is what's going to be. But I'm like, dude, I don't talk to any of those people. I talk to maybe like 2 or 3 people from high school that I'm still close with, that come to my fights, that have been good friends to me for a long time. And that's such a small number compared to like what I thought it would be when I was in high school. I'm like, man, we're gonna be friends forever. No. It's not that way. And like same with college. Like, I have a couple really good friends from college. Most of them moved out here with me, right, and live out here with me. So like the people that I'm close with, I've found are like, or have long, like you're gonna have chapters of your life, right, and you're gonna have 2 or 3 people from each chapter maybe that make it on to carry on into the book. And when you're young though, you don't see that. You're like, these are gonna be people I care what they think about forever. And
it's true.
Quickly you realize not, right?
I tell my kids that all the time. When I was growing up, I learned real quick in life, most people are not gonna have your back like, your brother, your mom, your dad. Most people don't have the best interests out for you. And most people are going to look out for themselves when it comes down to it.
Yeah, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, it's a brutal world, and that's there are people, been friends 20 years, but honestly, it's very rare nowadays.
I have few people in my life like that. My family, obviously, super close. I know I can count on them for anything. And then I have a few friends that like, they're in my circle, and I try to keep my circle really small. And then if you're in my circle, it's hard to get out. Like you got to really do some messed up shit to get out of my circle, but it's also hard to get in, And so I think that's a good way to be, and I don't think you should be guarded or jaded or treat people bad, but the people that you really let into your life and into the big moments and the bad moments, like that needs to be a small group, or else you get your heart broke. Yeah. So
when you're down and out, when you're up and up, you get a ton of phone calls about how good you're doing, how proud of people are of you. People want to borrow money. People, you're the top dog, right? But when you're out and out, where's everybody at?
Yeah. Well, when I was on that 2-fight win streak, man, in the UFC, I was riding high. My DMs were full of, you're the best. We love you, man. You're killing it. We're so proud of you. We always knew you'd do this. But when I went on that 3-fight losing streak and then had a DQ win and everybody was roasting me, talking shit to me, bro, my positive people in my life, a lot of them disappeared.
Yeah.
And like then I won and they came back. But I don't forget like, oh, where were you when I was going through this rough spot, right? Like I'm not going to be rude to anybody. I'm never going to be like, where the hell were you? Because it ain't worth my time. I'm like, thank you, on to the next, right? But it's definitely understanding, like Coach always says it, like when we lose, we got five phone calls. And when we win, you got 500. Sure. So make sure you're counting on those 5 people, not the 500.
It's so true. I spent used to, when I was locked up, I used to be in the back, and they would have like visitor time, and I just sit in the back. Nobody coming to see my ass. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like when you're down, then guess what though? You weren't looking for those people when you got out either.
But it's kind of funny. I was just thinking as you were talking to me that, because everybody, we know each other outside of here. I messaged you a couple of times to come and do the show, right? And then there was one time where you were busy, one time where I was doing a route. Yeah. And then we kept having to reschedule. And then you fought. Then you knocked this guy out with a slam, signed for UFC 300, and now we're doing the show. So it
worked out better,
right? Wasn't that
we had some positive stuff to say? Yeah, because the story would have ended with, my DMs are full of people that hate me and think I suck. Now we got some positivity we can lead into for sure.
When you're down, everybody shits on you.
Yeah, right. That's also a testament, just like when your parents and stuff is different. It's harder to find time to do things like this, right? Like you need to make time to do things, but man, when I was like, I used to think when I was like 23 years old living in my car that, man, this is so hard. Yeah, and now I got kids and I've made more money than I ever have in my entire life. And my life's way harder now than when it was just me. And it's way better. Like, I'm not saying it's worse. It's way better now than it was when I was 23. But when I was 23 years old, living in my car, had no responsibilities. Yeah. That was so easy, man. It was the easiest time of my life. I didn't have to worry about nothing but me.
It's not fun sleeping.
It's not fun, but it was easy. It was easy, bro. I didn't have to worry about anybody but myself.
Yeah, that's so true.
And that the perspective when that's what you're doing is so different. And that's the one thing about perspective, is that you can't give your perspective to somebody. You can't have somebody have your perspective. No matter how bad you want to, you can't. And people the only way you get perspective is through experience. And I try to tell these like young, like when you first met me, well, I was 26, just turned 26. I was the young guy on the team, bro. I'll be 30 this year. I'm an older guy on the team now. I'm like, you young bucks are gonna figure it out.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
So like, something that causes that though is being a dad, right? Being a dad, as you saying, your story has really changed you, huh?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like, before I had my kids, even when I was married, my main ambition in life was like, I'm gonna be world champion fighter. And while I still have that ambition, I feel like the way I thought I would get there, it was like, I'm gonna be a championship fighter because I'm gonna work really hard. I'm gonna train all the time. I'm gonna sacrifice this time, sacrifice that time, whatever it was. My ways to get there are different than they are now, right? Like, I still train really hard. I still put in the time in the gym. But I feel like if I'm being an excellent parent, if I'm being an excellent husband, if I'm being an amazing friend, if I'm being a great teammate, coach, whatever it is, if I'm checking all the boxes of doing things right in my life that are priority, then being a champion fighter is going to take care of itself. And I used to never really think that, I was like, it's all about how much work I'm doing. It's all about all the sparring and training and eating and lifting and taking care of me that's going to make me a champion fighter. And that stuff is important. But if I'm not being if I'm being a shitty dad or I'm being a bad husband, I'll never reach the level I want to be. And even if I do, it won't feel good. It'll feel empty. Yeah, right. And that's kind of the thing. Like Coach always says, I want to have champions in life and I want to have champions in the cage after that. But if you don't have, and so for me, if I'm not a champion in my life, there's no way I can have the success in the cage. It just won't happen. And that's not even championships. That's just wins and losses. I won't win if I'm not checking my boxes of what's really important. Being a good dad, being a good husband, being a good friend and teammate,
Life comes first.
Yeah, 100%. That was something like as a younger kid I didn't really get, I was like,
you could check all your training boxes.
Oh yeah.
But if your life is disorganized and chaos outside of the gym, you're not going to work out.
Well, the other thing too is like checking those training boxes. Like I still check all my training boxes, and when I was young, I used to think, man, I got no time. I'm stretched to the limit, right? And then as you get older, it's like, oh, I had time. Now I'm stretched. But when I was younger, I had all the time in the world. I just didn't take advantage of it. Like I still have time to do everything I need to do, but I'm definitely more stretched than I was, right? It's like the same thing as like living to your means, right? Like you're like, man, when I was living in Michigan and broke, right? And my house payment was like $800 a month. I was like, I don't know how I can do this. Now I'm paying rent at like 3 times that, and I'm still like, man, I'm making it work. I'm like, how was I struggling at $800 a month and I could make it at whatever this amount is? Yeah, way too much. Yeah, way too much. But that's kind of the same thing with your time, right? Like, depending on where you are in your life, you're always gonna be like, man, I'm stretched on my time. You just gotta figure out how you're gonna make it happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like,
except for you need to take some breaks, bro. You need to reel back. You are too stretched on your time.
Well, I always, something that helped me as well as being a dad. It's hard to put it in words without sounding corny. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna, you're gonna be a dad. But for myself, and some people don't want kids, I'm not forcing. Teach their own. Yeah. But, growing up, to give an example of how my children have changed my life. I grew up, growing up, I never really, I never smiled. Never really smiled. And I never really took time to enjoy the little things in life. And now that I'm older, there could be times where I'm working in my office and my phones would light up and my phone saver is a picture of my daughters, and I'll smile. Yeah. I'll instantly smile,
It's one of those things. Yeah, it's one of those things too. Like everyone's like, man, you won't get it till you have kids, and before you have kids, you're like, man, whatever. Like, shut up. It sounds corny, but then you have kids. I understand exactly what you're saying. Yeah. Like it's just different, man. It's like when you're not the most important thing anymore to yourself. Yeah. It's like life changing, life altering. Because when you have kids, you're not the most, like all the way up until you have kids, even when you're married, you're still the number one thing to you in your brain. You can't change it. just in everyone's brain, like self-survival, being self-sufficient, that's always going to come first because that's how we're wired as human beings, right? Like I love my wife. I'll do anything for her, take care of her. And even that changes when you have kids because now she's the mother of my kids. She's my wife and she's the mother of my kids. So my priority of like who's important and before myself, my 2 daughters and my wife. And that changed. That wasn't a thing till you have kids because then it's me. I'm number one. I got to take care of myself. I got to do right by me. But then you get married and then you're still like, okay, love my wife, but I'm still number one. And then she has your kids and you're like, okay, she's my wife and the mother of my kids. And my kids are all going to come before me. And that changes your whole perspective on life, I think.
You know, I was watching, do you ever watch Paternity Court?
No, sometimes the highlights of it. Sometimes I catch the highlights on TikTok.
I'm watching that stuff sometimes be cracking me up. And it goes to what we're talking about. A lot of times, let me get back. All right, I'm going to have to edit this. I lost my point because you made me feel embarrassed when you said you didn't watch.
I watched the highlights on TikTok.
Yeah. So a lot of times I was watching it the other day and the guy, of course he was the father, but starts just, and not just that, I see it a lot of times on YouTube and I heard it at work the other day. And, you know, this is going to sound like maybe with the young kids, simp, he's a simp. But why do you see here guys, my baby mama's a bitch, disrespecting the mother of their children, cursing them, being so. I seen a video the other day where a guy slams I don't know the context, I don't know the context, but the lady's holding her child and the dude slams the door, says get the hell out of here, and slams the door in her face. And a lot of times they'll say, well, it's my kid. I love my kid. I don't love that bitch. And you don't have to love that bitch, but the mother of your child is someone that you want to respect. And when I was younger, I would have friends that would say like, yeah, I'm paying the rent help pay the rent for my baby's mama. I'd be like, why are you doing that, man? Like that bitch. But I get it now.
Yeah.
That is the mother of your children. That's the person who's taking care of your children, who is providing for your children. Why disrespect? Put them down. Be like they have your children.
Yeah.
Like and if you don't respect them, then you really don't respect your children.
Well, the other thing, 100%. The other thing is, my parents were divorced and they did a great job co-parenting. And I, like, as an adult now, I'm like, maybe they didn't really like each other that much, but they never let me know that. And I think as a father to 2 girls, and the same can be said for like if you have boys, but as a father to 2 girls, the way I treat their mom is going to be their first experience of how a man should treat a woman. So if I'm treating their mom like shit, if I'm putting my hands on their mom, if I'm calling their mom names, all these things, they're like, oh, this is what a relationship is. So then when that happens to them, yes, I will be mad and I will go find whatever man hurts them. But at the same time, you have to look in the mirror and be like, well, that's what I was the example of. That was the model they had their whole life, was that's okay. So how can I be mad at this kid? Obviously, he didn't have a good model either growing up. How can I be mad at this kid? My daughter thinks it's okay and it's not okay, right? And so that's one thing, like in my relationship with Bobby, and we've talked about it, is like we want our kids to know this is how a relationship is supposed to be. There's supposed to be mutual respect. And it's not always that you're going to agree, but you're always, no matter what, going to respect each other. You're always, no matter what. Like one rule we had even before we had kids was that we will never go into an argument and just say things to hurt one another, right? Like if we're in an argument, the only things we're going to say to each other are to be constructive and fix the issue. I'm never going to be like, well, you're a stupid bitch, because that doesn't solve any problems. It just creates a negative response. Yeah, more problems.
Negative aura.
And we've been able to do that because we've been conscious, like we made this decision, we were going to do this. And it's easy when you're mad to be like, fuck you, you're a dumbass or you're a dumb bitch. But if you know, like going into an argument, I'm not going to do something like that, or I'm not going to model this behavior, it makes it easier. And that's not something I've really struggled with because, like you said, like my whole perspective of my wife when she became the mother of my kids, I love her even more now. I could never imagine not loving her, whether we were together or not, just for the simple fact that she gave me my kids.
Yeah. You should respect her whether y'all stay together or not.
Yeah, 100%.
You should set that example, like you said, especially you have daughters.
Yeah.
You should set that example whether you're together or not.
Could you imagine, like, if like your daughters grow up and then there's a guy treating them real bad and you're like, why you stay with this guy? He's an asshole. And she looked at you in your face and said, well, this is how you treated my mom.
Yeah.
What could you say? You know what I mean? Like, so, yeah,
It
I think it's super
both ways,
important.
people. We're not just talking about man and women.
Oh, yeah.
Are like that.
Oh, 100%.
It goes both
yeah,
ways.
100%.
Both ways. But you talked a little bit about it earlier. So your oldest daughter, she had a mutation?
Yeah, so she has a genetic mutation.
Genetic mutation, and you've already broke all these barriers with her already, and it's super rare. So that, I guess when it first happened, we didn't know what the hell was going on.
Yeah,
so
I had no idea. So my sister's she's a PA, and so she sent me some like medical journals from where she graduated, and so I was reading, and I don't understand all the medical terminology, but I had a pretty good idea of what it was saying. And so then when we went to the meeting with the actual doctors, and they were just basically telling me exactly what I just read, I quickly realized like they'd never seen this either. Like they understand it better than me because they understand the medical terminology. Yeah. But it's so rare. Like she's the only girl in this state probably that has it. So that has its own complications. But yeah, like she's killing it, man. And like it also, like for me, my perspective is different because I see how hard she works. Like she doesn't even know the word no. She can be frustrated, she can be upset, but she's never gonna tell me no. When she's doing therapy, she can't tell them no. She can't say give me a break. She can't say I'll do it later. She just has to do it. She just has to persevere through it. When she's also a toddler. Like at the end of the day, she still acts like a toddler.
Yeah, she's a baby.
Yeah. So she don't want to do it, but she still has to, and she does it. She might be upset, she might cry, but she never once is like, I'm not doing it. Because she can't. She doesn't have that option. So how am I gonna ever do that? How am I ever well, I'm not doing it.
I know, right?
You know, so but she's killing it, man. She can feed herself, which is like, these are things that, like, I feel like had I had my second daughter first, I would take these things for granted, I think, you know? And it was tough because my wife had Kingsley, my oldest, at the same time that one of our best friends had her son. So, like, they were growing up together. And so, like, it's hard not to compare what her son's doing and what my daughter's doing. Yeah. And, you know, Coach always says comparison's the thief of joy, and you're not supposed to do it. And try hard, but you're always comparing. You're always comparing. You're always comparing. And it was like, man, she's just not figuring this out. She's not figuring this out. And finally, I think I told my wife, I said, well, listen, we're just going to get to enjoy all the little things way more than most people would, right? Like our kid being able to feed themselves. Most parents probably don't think twice about that, but we're going to be like, wow, what a huge accomplishment. We're so happy about this. Like we're going to get little moments of joy that other parents won't even have. So that perspective changed. Because I could have been like, man, F this, our kid isn't figuring it out. She can't figure it out. It's unfair. And it is unfair. But if that was my mindset, it'd be tough. It'd be tough to make sure that she's getting everything she needs, right? So my mindset is, well, we get to enjoy these things more than other parents because we don't know what the next milestone she's going to get is. So we got to soak it up when she gets one. So she's feeding herself. That's amazing. She is learning to take some steps on her own at 1.5 years, 2 years old. That's amazing. Like all the things that other parents, like they love it, but it's expected. We never had an expectation. Like we knew we were going to work our ass off. We're going to work really hard with her. We're going to put her in all the therapies we can to give her the best shot. But I never had an expectation of she'll be able to walk. She'll be able to feed herself. She'll be able to talk. She'll be potty trained. Like all these things that are like, oh, eventually, like this is the expectation. I never had those. So when those things happen, if they happen, I'll be that much more grateful for it.
So when she was born, were the symptoms like she was just didn't do nothing? Or?
So when she was born, she was like a little delayed. Like she wouldn't really play with toys, but we didn't really know like what it was. We're like, I just figured like maybe she's just a little behind. And then she kept having like these reactions, like these visible, like the infantile spasms. But our doctors at the time were telling us it was just bad acid reflux. Mm. And so for like 2 months, they're like, oh, it's just bad acid reflux. It's just bad acid reflux. And finally my wife was like, I don't think that's what it is. I'm taking her into the ER. Took her in the ER, and then they diagnosed her with infantile spasms. They did a EEG, which is like a scan of her brain, and then they did genetic testing. And then they came back to us and were like, well, here's the exact thing that it was, which was the ALG13 mutation. Oh. Yeah, so had my wife not done that, well, I think that's part of the reason that there's not as many cases, because they only just started testing this specific genome for mutation, like or they added like more in-depth genetic testing than they did like years and years ago. So there could have been people that had it and like they didn't even know. They just were like, oh, they're autistic or they're whatever, and didn't have like a real diagnosis.
They did them the wrong
diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. Is it possible that she becomes verbal?
There's a small possibility, because I think it's like 90% of the kids aren't. So 10% out of 40, I think there's like maybe 2 or 3. I don't know the exact math on that.
Is she able to learn sign language?
Yeah, so she can do some sign language. We've done some signing with her. She can do more. She can do done, but that's about it right now. But we've just kind of started with her speech. I'm trying to, yeah. I'm trying to. And then like there's also this new program we started where it's like a tablet and it has like different commands. And there's been a few kids that have it that have been able to communicate through that. Yeah, so there's a lot of options of what we're doing. And that's one thing I say, like I'm super lucky that, you know, we were here before we found out we were pregnant, because Colorado has so many good resources and just like they have things that South Carolina doesn't have and Michigan doesn't have to take care of Kingsley and make sure she has every opportunity to achieve everything she's going to achieve. Like the children's hospital out here is like next level. People come in from all over the country because they have such good doctors, such good programs, such good therapies. And I'm lucky I live 30 minutes away, you know?
So that's amazing though that y'all are able to. Does your wife like work, like do drills with her?
So my wife, she actually went and got her CNA, her certified nurse assistant, and she's her full-time caretaker. Yeah. Nice. So she does a lot. I remember when our therapist first came, they're like, man, you're one of the only, this was sad, but they're like, you're one of the only parents that's on the floor with her, helping her.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's crazy to me too. But yeah, she's with her every day. So she has therapy probably 3-4 times a week. And then when she's not doing therapy with her therapist, my wife is doing her therapy. So she has to drill and do reps all the time. She doesn't get a break. I feel bad for her sometimes. Sometimes I'll snatch her up and just run away with her.
Chill.
Yeah. Give her a break. Yeah.
And your other daughter is healthy as could be, huh?
Yeah, Millie's healthy as can be.
So you've actually seen the difference.
Yeah, I've seen a huge difference just in like little things that I didn't even think I would notice. Like Millie's all about playing with toys. She's very alert. She's very like, will make eye contact with you, and she babbles a lot, quite a bit, and just does some things that are different. You know, was rolling over. Like Kingsley wasn't even rolling over or sitting up until she was almost 1.5 years old. So yeah. Yeah. Crazy. You know, it's crazy too. Like you forget. Sometimes it's hard for me not to take things for granted, even with Kingsley. Cause like a year ago, we were looking at like some Christmas videos from a year ago, and she had just learned to like take 1-2 steps, and now she's running all over. So like just in that short, in a year. Good. Yeah. It feels really good. Definitely.
So then just get back a little bit to MMA, I guess we guess we'll talk MMA for y'all people who are listening. I guess some of these people are listening for MMA, right?
Yeah, you think maybe just a couple.
Just a couple. What's it like training at a world-class gym under, you know, being in the UFC, having a full-time job? What is that experience like for the people who actually maybe want to take that path?
I mean, it's awesome. It's a long journey. My youngest brother wants to fight, right? He keeps telling me he wants to fight. And I'm never going to talk him out of it or tell him not to do it. But I do want him to know, like, it's not easy, right? Like, I had the expectation, all these fighters make so much money. I'm going to make so much money. And it takes a long time to make a return on your investment in terms of years, time, whatever. Like, you get it because you've done it. But if you've never done it, you have this idea in your head that like, oh, I'll get to the UFC and like so fast. And then once I get to the UFC, then I'm good. I'm set for life. And that's not the case, right? And for me, I'm lucky I got to the UFC super fast comparatively. I mean, I was in the UFC in a little over 3 years, which is like
it's lightning fast.
It's stupid, really. And so I didn't even have to go through the struggle that a lot of guys on the regional scene have had to go through. But being at Factory X is, I mean, I love them. I got them tatted on my neck. I love Factory X, bro. I'd do anything for that place. And like I said, it's not even just the training and the fighting. It's the culture and, you know, the family that you have there and the way they take care of you and the way they bring you in and the way they treat you when it's good, when it's bad. I'm the same dude when I go beat Bo Nickal, I'll be the same dude there as I was when I was on a 3-fight losing streak, right? Yeah. Which is a good thing.
We don't give a shit.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what you want, right? Like, they're going to be happy for me and for my success, but they're not going to look at me different. They're not going to ask me for anything. Like, they just want me to be successful for me. And I want that for all my teammates. And that's rare to find in MMA. I think I've been to a lot of different gyms. There's not many like Factory X, if any. And, you know, I knew when I was looking for other gyms back in 2020 where I was going to go. They're like, you should go check out ATT. You should go check out Kill Cliff. You should go check out all these other places. I was like, no, I'm going to Factory X. And that's where I'm going to move and live. And it's worked out. And like I said, it'll be where I end my career for sure. And I've met some of the best people in my life here. And I just feel fortunate. And then obviously like on the MMA side of like training, it's great. I get my ass whooped all the time, which is what you need. You need to take your lumps. You need to lose. That's the only way you're going to grow and get better. And, you know, we were talking about earlier, I was 26 years old when I came to Factory X, and I don't think I won a round for like a year. And now I'm almost 30 and, you know, I'll maybe win a round every now and again, but it's definitely a growing process.
You never go undefeated, right?
No one's going undefeated at the gym.
Ain't no Fridays going undefeated.
No, for sure.
Now you have a good Friday, but always take your good lumps. Can you imagine what's gonna happen when you beat Bo Nickal? Can you imagine? Like, it's gonna be.
I've thought about it. I try not to think about it too much, but I definitely have thought about it, man. And more so than anything, what I'm excited for is when I go have the performance that I think I'm gonna have. Like I said, it's just gonna prove the people that know what I'm capable of and the people that believe in me right. And that's something that is special to me and super cool, just because I know what it looks like. I know what the odds are. I know what people are saying. And so for people to, in spite of that, believe in me, it means that much more. And I have no doubt that I'm gonna beat this kid. I really, I believe it 100%. So I'm looking forward to it. And like I said, what a cool opportunity for me. UFC 300, biggest card of all time. No one thinks I'm gonna get it done. Like, I go shock the world.
You're on the pay-per-view too, right?
I'm not sure. They haven't released the bout order yet, so we'll see.
Most likely he's going to be on the pay-per-view.
He's been on the pay-per-view the last couple, so I would imagine maybe. If not,
does that change your purse?
Not mine. No, doesn't change my purse. I don't get any pay-per-view points, but not yet. We gotta win the belt, then we'll get the pay-per-view points.
So, man, you ran through that. That was really good.
Yeah.
I always ask this, you probably know this already. What message do you have for everybody out there? See that camera right there? I want you to look in that camera and give a message to the world of what you want to say. And you can even give your prediction.
For my fight and everything? Dang.
Right there.
I guess my biggest message for people, it's kind of like a two-parter, right? I feel like always pursue your passions, even when it's hard, because it's going to be hard, because nobody's passionate about things that are going to be easy to do, whether it's fighting, podcasting, owning a business, right? Like, all those things are difficult and they have their trials and tribulations, but this life's way too short to be stuck doing something that you don't love doing or like doing. So just pursue your passions and have faith that it's going to work out. And then I guess my second part would just be empathetic and compassionate to people, right? Like, it was hard for me for a long time. I know it's a weird message maybe coming from a fighter who punches people in the face, but I love this podcast because it's all about everyone's story. And like, looking at me walking down the street, you would never know my story. Looking at Chris, you would never know his story. Looking at Agan, you'd never know their story. So this podcast should be eye-opening to people that everybody has a story, everybody has things they've gone through, and that's the reason that maybe they are the way they are. And just have some empathy for people and compassion for people. And I feel like this world and this place we live in would be much better. And maybe that's a little hippie message from a professional fighter, but in my old age, maybe I'm getting soft, but that's really how I feel. So yeah, and then tune in to April 13th, UFC 300. I'm definitely going to handle business, get this kid out of there. I think I get him out in late second, so come back to this. Check the receipts.
Appreciate the plug.
Yeah, for sure, bro.
Get that on a promo. It was nice talking to you.
Hell yeah, bro. I'm glad we've got to do it. We'll have to link back up after I smoke this kid.
You're welcome here anytime. That couch is for you anytime.
Hell yeah, bro.
Just like on an off topic though, I'm super proud of you.
Thanks, brother.
Not just about, accomplishing your UFC, but you're a great dad. I always look at your posts and I always see what you're doing, and I'm just super proud of you. And I appreciate everything you've done, man.
I appreciate you, brother. Yeah, man, for sure.
All right, well. All right, guys. That was that. Episode 12. Make sure you like. Make sure you subscribe. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers here in the next few months. I appreciate everybody who is subscribed. I appreciate everybody who's following, all the DMs, everybody who's reached out to us. I really appreciate y'all. And something that, Cody had said, this is y'all's show. I'm trying to make a podcast here for the regular person. We get it. We have enough of the Logan Pauls and the super famous people on podcasts doing their thing, the Joe Rogans and all the super famous people. This is for the ordinary person to come in, and this is a platform to hear their story, all right? Everybody has a story. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter if you think you have struggles or you don't think you have struggles. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a purpose, and it's up to you to share your story and find your purpose. This is C-Rod from the Send Me Your Story podcast, and I'm out.
Hell yeah.